Hello, Elliot Rodger here. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day when I will have my rejection against humanity. Against all of you.
During
the last 8 years of my life since I hit puberty in
the county of
Santa Barbara, California, United States of America.
In Santa Barbara County, this in California, in the United States, it is mostly inhabited by university students. Here they live their youth fully, attending parties, making friends, experiencing love, all while studying a profession, of course, with the aim of being successful people when they graduate from their careers. Elliot Rodger has all the resources to fit in and enjoy this privileged life and his promising future, but he has a serious problem inside him. After feeling unjustly rejected for years by those around him, Elliot uploads videos to YouTube victimizing himself, expressing his hatred towards women for not giving him attention. The delusional young man would decide to punish humanity on his own day of retribution, as described in details in his written manifesto. With knives and firearms, Rodger begins his mission to annihilate everyone who crosses his path on May 23rd of the year 2014. Crosses his path. Elliot Oliver Robertson Rodger was born on July 24th of the year 91 in London, England. His father is Peter Rodger, a British filmmaker, and his mother, Lynn Sheen Rodger, a nurse in film productions. At the age of 5, his family moved to Los Angeles for a better life. His dad's dream of making movies seems to have a better future in Hollywood. On the other hand, Elliot spends his childhood in California envying the so-called cool kids, but wishing to be one of them. I was a bit frustrated with my parents for not raising me to be one of those kids. They never made an effort to dress me stylishly or give me a good haircut. I had to work hard to rectify this. I had to adapt. Elliot would write this and additionally add, my first act was to ask my parents to let me dye my hair blonde. I've always envied and admired blondes. I always found it much more beautiful. He is growing and his envy and insecurity are increasingly dominating him. When he goes to play with one of his few friends, if this friend pays attention to other children, he gets so upset that he goes off to cry, sitting in a corner. It's normal to have, let's say, concerns and insecurities as one grows, but the role of his parents in Elliot's upbringing leaves much to be desired, and they end up condoning these problems economically. All his needs are covered, but he gets to the point where he convinces himself that he deserves everything he wants. The world will never please all his whims, obviously, as his parents do, and the rest of his life he will deal with this in the worst way. His only security is perhaps the family environment in which he lives, but this was not going to last long. At his 7 years, the sudden divorce of his parents marks the beginning of a new life. He and his younger sister will live with their mother in a smaller house, and they would spend the weekends with their father at his home. A few months after my 7th birthday, a new and very important person would enter my life. One day after father picked us up from school and took us to his house, I saw a woman with dark hair and fair skin standing in the kitchen, and she introduced herself as Somaya. She would become my stepmother. This would be said by Rodger in his manifesto. Somaya takes on her new role as stepmother, but Elliot grows increasingly rebellious as his biological mother indulges him without limits. His new mother tries to instill some much-needed discipline, but he decides to ignore her because she is not his real mom. He hates being scolded when he does something wrong, detests being asked to help with household chores. Not even his mother scolds him or demands any of this from him, so according to him, he shouldn't have to put up with it coming from someone else. His relationship worsens even more at 13 years old when his father and stepmother have a new child named Jazz. Elliot's arrogance pushes away people who approach him in a friendly manner, but those who seek to annoy us don't think twice. In school, he's one of the shortest in his class, so the bigger kids take advantage of him. In high school, the pattern repeats and hatred slowly consumes him. not only towards those who annoy him, but also towards the women who prefer to be with guys like those who annoy him. On the other hand, in his adolescence, Elliot starts his YouTube channel where he uploads videos complaining about his loneliness and how the world rejects him. In some corners of the internet, he finds communities of people with similar ideas to his own. The most notable trait they share is a hatred towards
women.
his greatest desire is that very thing he hates so much. Sadly, this is not an exaggeration. With the onset of puberty, he would begin to focus all his efforts on improving the most superficial aspects of himself, believing that this would get him a girlfriend. He assumed that having a beautiful blonde girlfriend would solve all his problems, but Elliot was unable to take the most important step in his quest for a companion to talk to her. At home, he didn't have to do, let's say, anything to get what he wanted, and he convinced himself that simply by wearing designer clothes and a good hairstyle, all the pretty girls would come to him to give him the love and pleasure he so longed for. The few friends he has distanced themselves because of his attitude, as Elliot can't stand that they do get a girlfriend and he doesn't. His best friend, James Ellis, who is also a loner without a girlfriend and has also not had intimacy, also distances himself when surprised by his extreme misogyny and vengeful fantasy for feeling rejected. His superiority complex and arrogance drive away everyone who once called him a friend. On the other hand, in his family, tensions begin to arise over money. Peter continues to work as a filmmaker, but in 2009, his documentary titled Oh My God is a tremendous failure and he loses hundreds of thousands of dollars. In a series of leaked emails, Shin asks for money to pay for the insurance of his luxurious car from Elliot, but Peter asks for time to recover financially. The mother tells him that she and her son are very disappointed in him for not giving the young man what he needs. In a long email, Elliot personally blames Peter for not fulfilling these whims and for being controlled by Somaya, whom he refers to as a bitch. Just as Shin convinced his son that he didn't have to listen to Somaya, his stepmother also convinces him that his father is really not fulfilling him. Unaware of the damage he is doing to himself, he becomes increasingly unbearable. In an effort to seek a change in the young man, his parents decide it would be a good idea for him to accompany his Maya on a trip to her country, Morocco. Elliot mentions in his manifesto that they are probably trying to get rid of him for a while. Given his attitude, he is probably right. He hates his stepmother, so he tries to avoid the trip at all costs. Throwing a tantrum with my mother didn't work. She was already convinced of this, the young man would say in his manifesto. Besides, he would add, I spent the last 5 days at my father's house there. I decided not to protest at all because I knew it wouldn't work. Elliot's silence raises suspicions from Peter and Somaya, who are used to his tantrums. Instead, he sets his plan in motion, getting up at 4 in the morning to prepare and escape. At 6 a.m., the garbage truck would pass by, and all the noise it makes would supposedly hide the sound of the door when leaving. To his surprise, Peter put an alarm on the door, thus frustrating his escape plan while everyone sleeps. Elliot decides to wait until breakfast time and tells his father that he will go for a short walk before his trip. Peter still looks at him suspiciously as he walks out the door. As soon as he leaves the house, the boy runs at full speed. He heads towards his mother's house with the idea of hiding in a hidden place in the roof. He has barely run a block when he looks back and his father has caught up with him. His plan with this fails, and to his suffering, the spoiled boy will have to go on an all-expenses-paid trip to a beautiful and exotic country. Since the trip to Morocco begins, Elion does not stop complaining and complaining. He cries and throws tantrums all the time despite being already 17 years old. He is quite a handful, let's say. Upon arriving at his destination, he contacts his mother by mail from a cyber cafe. Every day he sends her a bunch of emails telling her how miserable he is and begging her to come for him. After a week of tantrums, offending Somaya's family and making everyone feel as miserable as he is, Shin buys a ticket to Morocco to pick up his son. Upon returning to the United States, Elliot reevaluates his situation for a few days. The relief of being back is so great that his absurd frustration doesn't bother him immediately. But the effect wasn't going to last a lifetime. Soon he finds himself again looking with fury and envying every couple he comes across. So Maya returns from Morocco and is very upset about the way he treated her. For everything he had put her through and his very unpleasant attitude, she decides to kick him out of the house since he is now 18 years old, and Peter supports her in her decision. Elliot's hatred towards her increases. For him, she has always been the evil stepmother who came to ruin his life, but reality is not as he paints it. In another of the emails that were leaked, a conversation between them is discovered shortly after he is kicked out of the house. In his message, he apologizes for being rude to her and asks her to forget what happened. He wants to move forward as he is supposedly striving to be a better person. Somaya's response, on the other hand, is extensive and detailed, revealing the torment that God made her go through for over 10 years. Among the points she highlights, she mentions the following. Every time I tried to explain to you that you needed to listen or do something, you told me that your mother said you didn't have to do anything I told you. Every time I tried to get you to do something in exchange for a reward, you said that your mother said that was corruption, so you wouldn't do it. Every time when you grew up and became addicted to video games and I tried to monitor because I said you would end up isolated without friends or social skills, which is the case now, you said that your mother allowed it and I couldn't do anything. Every time I asked you to help with something around the house, you refused and said that was my job and not yours. Every time we wanted to spend family time together, like going to the movies, the beach, restaurants, or some park, you would say, how about not? And if we decided to go, you would make our lives a hell so that we finally wouldn't go. Every time I had a fight with your father, it was because of you. Every time you manipulated my words with your mother, with your father, and created a very tense relationship between us and many horrendous situations. On the other hand, it's hard to doubt everything Somaya says in her email because, as I mentioned, these emails were leaked and no one would see them but themselves. She says many more things revealing that she really loved him and strived to be another mother for him, but Elliot was just abusive and rude to her. He even began to try to instill in his little half-brother that he should hate women and hit them if they approached him. She wishes him the best, hopes he achieves his goal of becoming a better person and finds happiness, but away from her and her son Jazz. She also reminds him that his dad loves him and they will continue to be as close. She hopes that their father-son relationship will improve now that she is no longer directly involved in his life. Now in college, his problem worsens instead of improving. Elliot still yearns for a girlfriend. He is still a virgin and can't stop fantasizing about how amazing it would be to have sex with any of these cute girls. And boy, there are plenty of them in this California city. He sees them everywhere on his campus, like I said, but his obsession is such that if he finds a classmate attractive and discovers through Facebook research that she already has a boyfriend, he throws a tantrum and drops the course for the rest of the school year as if he were a spoiled and whiny child. Seeing their son's obsession and frustration, Peter and Sheen seek psychiatric help for the young man. A psychiatrist evaluates him and prescribes him risperidone, a medication for psychosis, in the hope that his episodes of exaggerated frustration will be kept under control. But Elliot flatly refuses to continue his treatment. On the other hand, a therapist who advises him tells him that if he wants to get a partner, he should just approach women and simply talk. Elliot agrees to give it a try and try it, but the next session, he complains again about how girls don't seek him out. He believes that if they don't throw themselves into his arms and offer to have sex, he's being rejected. Then you can realize it's so immense that they must approach him, and tries to get their attention with his new bayerische Motorenwerkekar, expensive clothes and sunglasses without making any effort to socialize. In addition to his emotional and social problems, Elliot, as you've already noticed, was always spoiled by his mom, his grandmothers, his multiple nannies, so he expects no less from the rest of the women he comes across. Money has always been, besides, something very important to him. His attire and his car give him a certain status. He feels that he will need millions of dollars to truly fulfill his desires, attract women. After thinking and thinking about how he could get money quickly, he decides foolishly that the most appropriate way would be to buy lottery tickets. Elliot spends in total more than $1,000, and when he loses everything, he does not accept his defeat. He also believes that he deserves the prize and that the winner stole his money. The same pattern repeats and repeats. He can't stop thinking. I deserve to win the lottery. I deserve to have women. I deserve anything I want. His frustration takes him to a very dark place, and his desire for revenge keeps growing and growing. Elliot throws a big tantrum in his bedroom for having lost the lottery. He destroys his bed, drinks an entire bottle of wine, and accidentally spills it on his laptop. As expected, he manages to convince his mother to buy him a new one, saying that it suddenly stopped working. Once at the store, he has to wait a couple of hours for his order to be prepared, so he decides to go to a shooting range that was nearby, with this, the idea of a massacre as revenge against humanity. For the rejection he constantly feels, it becomes more and more real and keeps growing and growing. On the night of July 20th, 2013, Elliot makes a last attempt to fulfill his wish. I went out in Isla Vista to try to lose my virginity before turning 22. It was the only thing that could save me. I was giving the female gender one last chance to provide me with the pleasures I deserve from them. This was said by the boy who, as I was telling you, socializing made him very nervous, so he decides to get drunk before going to a party. He enters and mingles among the crowd, but no one pays attention to him, something that is normal, but he begins to get frustrated. Seeing an Asian boy with a white girl fills him with anger and envy, because in addition to being misogynistic, he is quite racist. Even though he himself is half Asian, Elliot decides to push the couple arrogantly, but the drunkenness causes him to lose his balance and fall. The couple kindly tells him that he should drink water to lower the alcohol in his body, but he feels offended instead and leaves. Outside the house, he feels pathetic for going alone, so he decides to climb up to a wooden terrace and watch many couples with envy and contempt. He starts making hand gestures as if he was shooting a gun. The young men also go up and talk to a couple of girls, making this man, this ignored boy, then angry. He starts to insult them and tries to push the women for talking to those boys and not to him. The boys, let's say as a normal reaction, push him back, and it's him who falls from a height of 3 meters. The god limps away with a broken ankle. After walking a bit, he realizes that he's missing his Gucci glasses that his mother gave him. So he returned to the party in a fury. He aggressively demands their return, assuming that someone stole them. Together, they manage to get him out of the house while he kicks and thinks about killing them all. In the struggle, he manages to land a blow on one of the guys who are subduing him, but this only causes them to give him a tremendous beating. Passers-by on the street intervene to stop the fight. And that's when Elliot realizes he entered the wrong house. The party where he lost his glasses is at the house next door. On his 22nd birthday, he can't stop feeling miserable and regretful. Not only is he still a virgin, but he also has to walk on crutches until his ankle heals. By this point, he had already exhausted his last chance to change his mind about Retribution Day. In his pathetic and disturbed mind, there was only the desire for violence. Elliot buys 2 guns and can't stop thinking about the final details of his massacre plan. He still occasionally uploads YouTube videos where he expresses his frustration and hatred towards women more and more explicitly. One night he hears a knock on the door of his apartment. When he goes out, he finds police officers who start questioning him. He can't handle the nerves if the police enter his room and discover his written plans and his weapons. He will undoubtedly go to prison. The officers' questions are more aimed at ensuring that the boy is okay, since someone saw his self-victimizing videos and alerted that Elliot might harm himself. He tells them it's all a misunderstanding and they leave his apartment without further ado. Unfortunately, the day of Retribution continues well. His plans for the massacre were complicated, but he believed he had everything resolved. First, he would drive to his father's and stepmother's house where he was going to take her life, and his half-brother Jazz's. Elliot couldn't bear the idea of his brother surpassing him in any way, and his hatred for his stepmother was no secret. The only problem is that he wasn't convinced he could take his father's life. So all of this depended on Peter going on a possible business trip. Afterwards, Elliot would drive back to Isla Vista in his dad's truck. He would finish off his roommates and use the apartment to invite strangers and finish them off too. The next step was to finish off the girl from the Alpha Phi sorority, where the most beautiful women on campus were. Finally, he would return to his father's truck, which he preferred because it was more lethal when he decided to run over innocent people. He knew he would have to pay dearly for the consequences of his actions, so he would end his life by taking a high dose of Xanax and Vicodin and shooting himself in the head with 2 guns at the same time. I am the Lord Voyager, magnificent, glorious, supreme, eminent, divine. I am the closest thing to a living God. Humanity is a disgusting, depraved, and evil species. My purpose is to punish them all. I will purify the world of all the evil in it. On the day of retribution, I will truly be a powerful God, punishing all those impure and depraved. This, he writes in his manifesto, which concludes by saying, I did not start this war. I was not the one who attacked first, but I'm going to finish it by attacking back. I'm going to punish everyone, and it will be beautiful. Finally, after all, I will be able to show the world my true worth. On May 23rd of 2014, Elliot begins his massacre, but not as he planned it. His father's business travel plans were cancelled at the last minute, indirectly saving Sumaya and Yaz because he could not murder his own father, so his first victims are his roommates Hong and George Shen, as well as a friend of theirs named Wei Han Wang, who unfortunately are stabbed multiple times before going out to continue with his massacre. Elliot uploads his last YouTuber video in which he openly expresses his hatred towards women and men who do not deserve the pleasure they provide him. Elliot threatens literally with total annihilation. After this, he sends his 137-page manifesto to 34 people, including his parents, relatives, his therapists, teachers, and childhood friends. His therapist opens the mail just 5 minutes after receiving it and immediately calls his father and the police. Both parents, Peter and Sheen, drive as fast as they can from their home in Los Angeles to their son's campus in Isla Vista, but it's already too late. The killer arrives at the Alpha Phi sorority dormitories with the intention of ending all the beautiful girls there, but luckily no one opens the door. Frustrated, Elliot returns to the street and shoots 3 young women passing by, tragically taking the lives of Catherine Cooper and Veronica Weiss and injuring Bianca Koch. After this shooting, he gets in his car and shoots from the window towards a store where a student named Christopher Mickles dies. Police officers spot him running from the scene, unaware that he is the aggressor. Rodger continues his massacre by shooting at some passers-by, running over others, and driving in the opposite direction. More and more law enforcement officers are trying to neutralize him, but he manages to escape unscathed from another shootout with an officer. Elliot keeps driving and shooting at innocents when he again finds himself embroiled in a shootout, this time with 3 police officers. He escapes again, but now he's bleeding profusely from a gunshot wound in his hip. The patrol cars are close behind him, and in his attempt to cause as much damage as possible during his massacre, he hits a cyclist named Kay Sean, seriously injuring him, and crashes into a van. Finally, nothing went as he expected, and since he doesn't plan to face the consequences, he has no other way out but to take his own life. Cowardly, Elliot shoots himself in the head and ends his own life after robbing the will to live from 6 people and injuring 14 more. After the attack, tributes were made for the innocent victims of this killer. People were very scared but also upset. Elliot's attack highlighted many social and authority issues. Specifically, the police visit to Rodger's apartment received a lot of media attention for not following up on the case from that point on. It shouldn't be so easy for an unstable young man to get weapons so easily. This one's misogyny. Character was not an isolated event. His actions only emphasized the sexism that many women suffer every day. Just like Rodger, there is a large community of men on the internet known as incel for practicing involuntary celibacy. They consider themselves incapable of sexually attracting women and are especially hostile towards them. Peter Rodger would later give an interview in which he expresses that he never imagined that his son could do something like this. For him, he presented himself in one way when he was someone completely different. But in view of what was revealed from the leaked emails and Elliot's narrations in his manifesto, it was obvious that he was a ticking time bomb. It's sad to think about all the victims in this story. Sometimes it's hard to overcome loneliness and work on ourselves to not suffer more from it, but it should never be a reason to hurt others, obviously.
If you liked this video,
Don't forget to follow me on my social networks.
And follow me on my new secondary channel, which is Pepe Misterio, where I upload similar videos but much shorter.
Thank you.